Hello TVS, welcome to my channel Science to Technology. I am your host Anupam Vipul. In today's show, Camera Tuesday, we're gonna talk about metadata. So let's dive right into it. Well, first you have to understand what the heck we are talking about, what the heck this metadata means. Metadata simply means there's a lot of extra supportive data about your main data. So metadata can be simplified as data about your data. So you take a photograph, be it from iPhone, be it from Android, be it from GoPro, be it from DSLR. It does not matter. All those cameras generally will create a lot of sub-information. Sub-information would include date, time, location in sometimes, and ISO, exposure, camera model, camera make, serial number, and all that jazz. There will be hundreds of information. So people generally, rather than putting all that information into name file, again name file will become too huge. So it's generally stored in containers. These containers are inbuilt into your image file itself. So the moment you take, it does not matter whether you have JPEG or RAW. All of those files from every single photo taking devices in digital era generally creates a container that is attached to your file. It's like embedded in your file, and that file will generally contain all the informations. So to make this experience seamless in digital world, generally one of the primary container is used is this exchangeable image file format, XF basically. So XF allows you to see all those data. Now where can you see that? Almost every application, whether it application I'm saying, every operating system, be it Linux, be it Windows, be it Mac, generally you can just go right click and properties. In properties you can go into details. Now in Windows I'm telling you, like Mac already has the something similar, and in Linux you can have other tools to do that. It's always there, you can easily read it. Now depending on your camera manufacturer, make and model, most of the data would be there, but not every single data. So you may find, hey, it does not show the lens data. You may find like, okay, lens maker and lens model, it generally is blank, it does not do that. However, if you go into Lightroom can read even more complicated tags basically. So it will give you, oh, this lens, this exact model. So be mindful of that. Do not be expect like, okay, I'm gonna right click and probably everything will be there. And not to mention, if you are downloading images from the web and all that, generally these data have been removed from that. So don't have your hopes very high for internet downloaded images. However, if you have image sharing websites, stock images, those scenarios, generally most of the time they will keep this information intact. So this is something that is done with images and videos also. So the moment when you say the select that people do, generally people think this is for syncing audio and video. That is true, but it also helps with some other things. Basically this becomes the first frame of a video file. So all you have to do, start the video, just pause, and you will read off all the information like date, time, short, tries, how many tries, depending on like concept and actors and actress, like all the details that they need for the shoot, they will be right there in the first frame of the video. It is very important. Now, what about the video world specifically? Now, specifically, you have to understand that when you are talking about a big shoot, basically Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, or Avatar, or Endgame, you are talking about a very large pipeline. To make sure this pipeline does not end up blowing up itself up, you have to have something known as digital imaging technician. Now, this does not used to exist in the old film era, but it became kind of mandatory in the basically digital era. Is that this guy, DIT guy, would be solely responsible for making sure the file goes from point A to point B intact. Like his job is to, like, let's say you have red Mac, you take the red Mac, he will copy it, he will clone it, he'll make sure that there are at least 2-3 clones, and he'll make sure all of them are integrally checked, basically what we call parity check, where it's like, yeah, the file is copied here, it's actually working. You might even right click and play it to just see it, absolutely. And then the files will be stored in physically different data. Like if you are talking about like very large shoot, you will have a server rack right there that will have a RAID arrays that you will dump the file, and then also there will be a portable file that will be sent to, like, okay, one guy take this car and go there, another guy take this car and go, because file is critical. You lose that file, it's done. You have to redo the shoot, and many times hard drives are super cheap compared to the cost of hiring Robert Downey Jr. So this guy is very critical and very important. Now DIT also do something extra like management, where you are thinking about like what happens if you have an audio recorder. You have to have someone who feeds in the data, like when the audio recorder was in use, how many, like if you have audio recorder that has like multiple channels, like it may have 4 channels, it may have 6 channels, were all of them recording, like what mics were used, all these data. Generally it's if you want to make sure your editing experience, post production is smooth, you have to make sure all the data is there, because every microphone has a certain signature. You may want that signature, or you may want to post that signature into something else. You need to know what was used in the first place. All that information has to go through DIT, and generally you will see DIT with keyboard and mouse and all that jazz, because they are typing a lot of information, like every single detail. And many times they could be like so integral where like producer would be like, hey, okay, I think we did the shot, but I think I want to try something. Type that out in like DIT, like they're like a special shot. So when they are doing a rough editing, they can like directly pull up that file. It's like, okay, because that file will have metadata, information, full detail, and then they're like, I think this works well. Yeah, it does not work well. So this is a very critical step in large cinema production, and it becomes like a crucial for CG also, simply because if you do not know which the millimeter, which aperture, which focal length was used, how the heck you gonna create a virtual camera to match it? You cannot do that. You have to know these sort of information. So it's very critical. It's not something that I'm gonna ignore. You can ignore it in a small budget, but the moment you try to ignore that in, let's say, end game, you will be in end game. So this, and in terms of this way, like big scale, you understand that it's a necessary and supported. But what about you? Like, what about a single man who's like just a basic wedding photographer? It allows you to do management. Now management is a very important, especially if you have multiple cameras. I have provided videos down below where you can see some people are dealing with multiple cameras. So let's say you have a videographer and a photographer. Videographer is doing the video and photographer is taking the photo. But what happens if their clocks, basically clocks in their cameras, are shifted? It's not properly, one is 11, another is 11:30. You try to import the file and you directly are pulling in the post-production where it's like, I'm gonna show zooming into this image and all that. You're like, wait a minute, I just showed the groom getting groomed up and all that jazz, and the photograph does not look right. Yeah, because the photo is before the grooming. So you get the idea. Like, these are little things, but if it happens in a client project, you will you may lose a lot of credibility. So it is very serious and very absolute that you do this properly. Your management relies on it. And it also makes file sorting easy for many scenarios where you could have like, hey, I'm using this camera and I'm good with that. Like, I can do color processing in this camera. If you have a large team, you could have like, hey, I'm not good with basically this color, basically let's say red. I'm not good with the red, but I'm very good with the RE. People can be like, okay, I will not take care of that. Or some scenarios are like, dude, just give me this file from this camera because there is a fault in the lens. I have looked into it and I will calibrate for that. So file management becomes very important and easy, and it could be just for like, hey, I have 5-6 cameras and I do not know which camera I use for the shoot. Right click, see, arranged on the file. So this is the whole point, management based on condition. You can even have utilize geotagging. Basically, if you are doing a lot of travel photography, where were you actually? Like, instead of directly remembering which exact location I was, like, you can see in the map where you were. So based on the conditions, you can find that. And it's the upper limit of this for video production is time syncers. This time syncers allows you to have like 4 or 5 cameras, or depending how big your equipment setup can be, you can sync multiple audio recorders, you can sync multiple cameras, and benefit of that, you can literally have all of them arranged in a timeline where you can just chop from one to another without any issue or hassle. It's a very important life-saving thing. You may think like, okay, clock, even if I set all the clocks in my camera and audio recorder properly, they will sync up. At the first, yes, but the moment you start to reach 5 minutes, they will start to drift a little bit. 10 minutes, okay, they are starting to drift. 15 minutes, or like, what the hell, the audio is literally out of sync. It happens because crystals are not accurate, so that's why a specific hardware is built. And in terms of broadcasting, where they have to do this continuously, there is a physical cable linking all this to make sure that time sync is always absolute. So management is a very critical thing, and metadata is a very core part of that. Now let's talk about money. So copyright and protection. Now generally it's advisable for all female photographers is generally to remove geotagging, because people can stalk them, and bad things have happened where people like, hey, I'm gonna upload this image into like image site where they are not gonna compress it, not gonna remove the data tags from it, and people just found out where do you live. That's a very serious breach of your privacy, and you have to make sure that you are aware of that, especially if you are doing photography seriously, like as a proper thing. So you have to remove geotagging. Again, in certain scenarios you may want to advertise it, but in certain scenarios you're like, hey, let's not share where exactly my home is, especially if you're doing candid photography and all that jazz. People are like, yeah, let's not share our home location. But again, if you are like booked a wedding hall, you may want to broadcast to the world that. So you have to be aware of that, especially in iPhone. It's always on, always by default. So it's a very serious thing. You have to be aware of that. And let's say you want to do a lot of stock photography, you are taking photographs in the basically Lightroom, you can feed in a lot of keywords. Now these keywords you may think, okay, it's just extra hassle for me. No, but it will the moment you do all the key tagging, and because you are doing directly in Lightroom, you can arrange the file much more efficiently. And once you actually export it, even in JPEG, these data will be there. What does that mean? That means the moment you want to export it into any reputable stock site, they will arrange your files based on tags, more accuracy in search, higher the profits. So it is very important. Like, it's like spend 1 hour in the early on and then save days of energy later. And copyright information is so critical to a digital camera that almost all digital camera directly allows you to feed in your copyright info. This is a Canon graph where you just have copyright information where you can put the author name and copyright information, which you could put like which year or your website or your email address. So this is easily doable, and this is like, if dumb person starts to steal your information, dude, right click and see my name is there, right click, just see it. And people may times, just to make sure that their files are protected, and if they have to share something similar, like let's say in the school or like sometimes of competition, people like put all the files into one central location for judgment, and somebody might like, oh no, I took that photo and I took that photo. How the heck you will prove that? Make sure you upload with all the metadata deleted, so if somebody copies it, they will not have any metadata. Faking a metadata is much more difficult than tampering with metadata. So if they have no metadata, like how would they know which lenses were used? How would they know which time it was taken? And when judges are like, dude, there is a conflict, which one of you took the photo? You're like, here's the original file with the metadata. So again, generally photographers are not that dumb, but it has happened in past. So being mindful of these kind of scenario is helpful. And there are certain applications like photo Exif editors. I have provided a lot of videos down below with tools and softwares which would help you to really start to utilize this tool to the maximum limit. So please be mindful of this. This is not something like, I'm gonna ignore it. No, it matters. Especially if you do it right, it will help you. It will save you time. It will make your life much more easy. So this was my presentation on just an index view of metadata. I hope you liked it, learned from it. In that case, please click the like button, share it amongst your friends. That will help me a lot. If you didn't like it, didn't enjoy it, I'd urge you to press dislike, press it twice to show me extra disappointment, and please leave a comment because I try to reply to all of them. Subscribe, press the bell icon if you're free, and as always, thanks for watching.